All right, folks, this is the After the Show show. We're going to do this regularly because so often in a 3-hour radio show, we are doing a blizzard of things, number one in the 3 hours, and making a lot of news with our newsmakers. So a lot of great topics on the show today, and we wanted to, if you missed it, give you a chance to find out a little bit about what happened. I have my trusty reading glasses on because I'm getting old. And I also want to just kind of jog my memory about some things we talked about. Big story today, really, I think, is what's going on nationally is that Barack Obama is trying to use the high price of oil and the pain that people are feeling at the pump to reverse his political fortunes. And our audience isn't buying it, but I think it's important that we be careful here. We also had some criticism today, myself included, of Speaker John Boehner, who really, in my view, bungled an ABC News interview with Jonathan Karl and allowed the administration to pound away today after the interview aired on ABC News last night on the fact that, he too would consider higher taxes on oil companies. See, here's the translation. Here's how it works. When you hear about investments, that's for, like plug-in cars and all kinds of, solar panels and all of Obama's green utopian agenda, all right? Those are investments. But oil companies, what they get are subsidies. Now, in the interview that John Boehner did, he did a pretty decent job of differentiating independent oil companies, which do 93% of the drilling here in the U.S., versus the big boys, okay? And the big boys, the Chevrons, the Exxons, the ConocoPhillips, they make these, giant dollars. Shell Oil, a former CEO, said, we don't need these subsidies. The big mega companies don't. The independents do. You know why? The independents take what they cash flow, put it all back in drilling, and then borrow against that. Now, high energy prices mean what? Supply isn't what it should be. So, if it leads to more investment and more energy, guess what will happen? The price of oil will come down. So the best cure for high energy prices is high energy prices because it kicks off a whole lot of capital and profit that allows them to reinvest. Now, sub-argument, but one I think that's important. Listen in the coming days about the absolute attack on profit. The attack on profit from this administration, the attack on profit from Democrats everywhere, and the sort of knee-jerk reaction to these numbers. When is profit bad? Somebody tell me when profit is bad. It's really ridiculous. However, we need to keep this in mind, folks. We are winning this argument 3-1 right now, according to a new, we talked about on the show today, a new Gallup poll, USA Today, CNN poll that came together, said the conservative Tea Party Republican argument on the fact that spending is out of control by our government, the debt is too high, and don't give us excuses, fix it, is winning 3-1. That's why the Obama administration was using Boehner's comments in an ABC interview today to say, see, even he wants higher taxes on oil companies. We need it to connect the dots. And by the way, a lot of the change that they're asking for, they call it removing the subsidies. I'd call it changing the tax provisions on oil companies, which basically, and again, Boehner, he did. Let's put this unheard on the show, would we? Okay, the link to the actual transcript of the Boehner interview. We'll put that unheard on the show because he gets to some of the arguments. He just does it in a very bad way. So the criticism of him, I think, is fair, but what the administration is doing is trying to change the topic. We spent a lot of time talking about that. Senator John Hoeven was on the program today. Senator Hoeven told us two things. One, speaking of the Obama administration, how they are doing disaster declarations is now different. The process is different. He doesn't expect the outcome, in other words, the actual dollars that come to the state, to be any different. He also said Rick Berg's likely to be a Senate candidate. There was a political story today about a letter that came from Republican legislators, elected state leaders, encouraging Rick Berg to run, and Senator Hoeven said Rick Berg is likely to run in the Senate race. So that was big news today as well. And of course, Al Carlson was on, talked about a lot of things about the session wrapping up, him talking about the level of spending. He said one of his big disappointments was the oil tax issue didn't get addressed, but it'll be priority one in the next race. He also talked about the NCAA and the fact that meeting most likely will happen over the Fighting Sioux name issue, but in Indianapolis, with North Dakota leaders going to Indianapolis, meeting on NCAA turf. So that, I thought, was interesting news as well. A lot of our listeners get it. A fellow by the name of Ron from Jamestown called. He said, I'm so tired of hearing North Dakota Democrats pound on oil companies that are investing all this money here as if they're not putting a lot back. And he said, how much money is coming from oil companies and actually going to these counties and going to the state? we did some quick math and found the calculation is about to hit $100 million a month. Think about that, folks. The oil industry paying taxes in North Dakota of $100 million a month. You can go back to like the 03 to 05 biennium. It wasn't $100 billion in a biennium. And it's about to be $100 billion. That's a game changer. That's a game changer, ladies and gentlemen. And the point is, government's getting a whole lot of money from oil companies. The listeners get that. The counties, well, I've got the figures here, but I don't want to bore you with a lot of numbers. But, water gets 20%. A lot gets spun off into this. The counties get a lot of money. I think this biennium about $170 million. All you need to know is this. What the state and counties are investing to support the oil industry, roads and infrastructure, is a lot less than what they're paying. They're paying a lot more than what's going out, and our listeners get that. They don't buy into this beat up on big oil stuff. So a little summary of what's on today's show. Tomorrow we're going to talk with a mega Wall Street investor that's investing big in a North Dakota company. His name's Mike Tokars. The company's Pedigree Technologies. We have an exclusive interview with him on his visit to Fargo today for a Pedigree Technologies board meeting. We also are going to talk with a small business owner about starting a small business because they are the economic engine in North Dakota. Neat, innovative idea, collecting a bunch of agreements with restaurants and delivering to you some great food. Kind of a neat idea that we'll tell you about as well. And then a couple of national players, including our buddy Andrew Breitbart on his new book, Righteous Indignation, as well as a presidential candidate, Gary Johnson, who has announced his candidacy for president as a Republican, kind of a non-traditional candidate, former governor of New Mexico, on tomorrow's show. That's a wrap-up of today's show and a preview of tomorrow's show. Thank you for listening to The Scott Hennen Show and watching at ScottHennen.com. God bless you. Bye-bye.